Meet the USS Iowa, a legendary behemoth of the U.S. Navy. We're talking about a monster nearly 300 meters long, tearing through the Pacific at 33 knots. That's 60,000 tons of steel moving faster than a hunting great white shark. Back in World War II, some destroyers running on nothing but old-school boilers could even hit 45 knots. But here's the strange part. 80 years later, in an era of gas turbines and lightweight composite materials, modern warships rarely push past 30 knots. Technology has skyrocketed, yet speed has plummeted. Why? To understand this, we have to turn back the clock. Early 20th century. The world was just waking up to a brutal truth. In naval warfare, speed is life. May 1905, the Tsushima Strait, that narrow stretch of water between Japan and Korea. This is where the Russian Imperial Navy suffered one of the most crushing defeats in history. After stumbling in Manchuria, Russia pinned its last hopes on the Baltic Fleet. Their plan was to sail all the way from Europe to the Far East to break the Japanese blockade. To make that happen, those ships had to survive a grueling 18,000 nautical mile journey, crossing 3 oceans and 4 climate zones. By the time they arrived, 7 months later, the Russian fleet was a shadow of its former self. Admiral Roshesvinsky's formation was a mess, a mix of brand new vessels and obsolete ships from the previous decade. Because of this, the entire fleet had to slow down so the older hulls could keep up. And it got worse. After such a long voyage, their hulls were caked in thick layers of barnacles, creating massive drag. The result? The Russian fleet was limping along at a maximum speed of just 12 knots. Meanwhile, the Japanese Navy, led by Admiral Togo Heihachiro, was fresh and ready. Their ships were uniform, well-maintained, and capable of maintaining 18 knots. That's 50% faster than their opponents. And that speed gap decided everything. It allowed the Japanese to dictate the entire rhythm of the battle, where to fight, when to fight, and how to fight. Seeing the Russians approaching in a single column, Admiral Togo executed the classic maneuver, crossing the T. He ordered his fleet to arc across the front of the Russian formation, creating a perpendicular wall of fire. From that position, the Japanese could unleash every gun they had, raining steel down on the enemy. The Russians, stuck in their column, could only respond weakly with their forward guns, struggling to aim without hitting their own ships. The slaughter lasted half a day. When the smoke finally cleared, the Tsushima Strait had become a graveyard. Over 30 ships sank or surrendered. Nearly 5,000 sailors were lost forever. That victory didn't just end the war, it kicked off the age of speed. From Britain and France to the US and Japan, superpowers started pouring money into building the fastest ships possible. Speeds kept climbing. Battleships went from 18 knots to over 30 by World War II. The belief was simple. On the ocean, faster meant stronger. But if speed is so critical, then why have we slowed down for the last century? It comes down to basic physics. For a ship, speed depends on 2 things, engine power and hull design. Sure, you can put in a bigger engine, but a bigger engine needs more fuel, more machinery, and more cooling. That means the ship has to get fatter. A wider ship means more drag. So the extra power you just added gets wasted just trying to push that extra water out of the way. Take the USS Yorktown, commissioned in 1937. Despite weighing over 25,000 tons, she could slice through the water at 32.5 knots. But soon after, the USS Essex arrived. This ship packed a massive 150,000 horsepower propulsion system, a 25% increase in power compared to its predecessor. And what did that extra power buy them? Just 0.5 knots of extra speed. That is a terrible return on investment. Aside from the ship getting heavier, there is a natural limit that every engineer fears. When a ship moves, its bow pushes water aside, creating a wave at the front and leaving another wave at the stern. The ship essentially gets trapped in a trough between these 2 peaks. To go faster, the hull physically has to climb up the wave it just created. Oceanographers call this wave-making resistance. And here's the kicker. This resistance isn't linear. At low speeds, it's negligible. But the faster you go, the stronger it gets. Think of the sound barrier in the sky. Well, ships face a similar wall in the ocean, but unlike air, water is 800 times denser. Breaking through that wall requires an insane amount of energy. Speed also destroys ships. When running at full tilt, the hull slams repeatedly against the waves. This constant vibration and high-intensity stress cause the paint to strip off, welds to crack, and the steel itself to suffer from metal fatigue. The result is a shorter lifespan for the hull and a massive maintenance bill. Engineers tried to solve this by changing the shape of the ship itself. Instead of brute force, they turned to hydrodynamics. We saw the rise of multi-hull designs like the USS Independence littoral combat ship. Its trimaran design reduces drag, allowing it to hit an impressive 44 knots. But there's always a catch. Multi-hulls are expensive to build, can't carry heavy loads, and crucially, they are notoriously unstable in rough, deep ocean waters. That's why you mostly see them hugging the coast rather than patrolling the middle of the Pacific. So we've crunched the numbers on power and design. Both have limits, but the real question shifted. It was no longer how do we go faster, but why do we need to? Because ultimately, a ship's value isn't its top speed, it's the mission. Back in World War II, surface ships were the stars of the show. The doctrine was simple. Guns rule, torpedoes support. Battles were fought at close range, usually 20 to 30 kilometers. In that world, speed was survival. An extra knot could mean the difference between flanking the enemy or being sunk. The obsession with speed lingered into the Cold War. The Soviets terrified the West with the Project 6661 Papa-class submarine, which could hit nearly 45 knots. But by the 1980s, everything changed. Long-range radar and precision-guided missiles took over. Today, naval battles can happen over hundreds of kilometers. Carrier-based aircraft can strike targets 1,000 kilometers away. At that range, it doesn't matter if you're doing 30 knots or 40. You cannot outrun a missile. To survive in modern warfare, you don't need to outrun the enemy. You need to outsmart them. You need to stay hidden, react faster, and strike from farther away. That's why naval architects stopped obsessing over engines and started obsessing over geometry. Take the USS Zumwalt destroyer. It looks like something from a sci-fi movie. Despite displacing a massive 15,000 tons, its angular shape gives it the radar cross-section of a tiny fishing boat. Its top speed, about 30 knots, slower than ships from World War II. But it doesn't matter, because if the enemy can't see you, they can't kill you. There's another problem with speed: noise. High speed creates massive hydrodynamic noise and engine vibration. To a submarine hunting below, a fast ship sounds like a drum kit in a library. It lights up active and passive sonar instantly. In an era where submarines are the ultimate predators, silence is a tactical weapon. It is better to move slowly and stay invisible than to sprint and become a target. Then there is the issue of stability. Modern warships are floating computers. They carry sensitive vertical launch systems, laser optics, and high-tech radars. These instruments need a stable platform. If you are bouncing over waves at 40 knots, you risk damaging delicate sensors or, worse, corrupting the targeting data in real time. You can't fire a precision missile if your ship is shaking violently. Furthermore, modern warships rarely fight alone. They operate in strike groups, alongside aircraft carriers, destroyers, and crucially supply ships. A fleet is only as fast as its slowest member. If a destroyer sprints ahead at 40 knots, it breaks the defensive formation and leaves the heavy supply tankers behind. It becomes isolated and vulnerable. That's why the standard cruising speed for a fleet is usually just 18 to 20 knots. Sprinting is reserved only for emergencies. Finally, there is the fuel bill. Moving at top speed burns fuel exponentially, drastically reducing the ship's range. For a Navy that operates globally, running out of fuel in the middle of the ocean is not an option. Running engines at 60 to 70% capacity is the sweet spot. It saves fuel, reduces wear and tear, and extends the time between expensive overhauls. So after a century of evolution, navies around the world, from the US to Japan, have come to a consensus. We stopped chasing speed records because we realized they were pointless. 30 knots is the new magic number. It is the perfect balance between performance, cost, and endurance. In the end, a warship isn't judged by the numbers on a spec sheet, but by whether it can survive the battle and complete the mission. And in today's war, being smart is far more dangerous than being fast. Thanks for watching Dark Origin. If you enjoyed this deep dive, make sure to like and subscribe for more.